The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hello there. Obi-Wan Kenobi here, also known as James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan,
Jedi Master Plo Koon,
and many other characters in the world of Star Wars. You're listening to... Shh, don't tell. It's The Secrets of Star Wars. May the Force be with you.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 163.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Angela Sealana, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books to TV shows and much more, we are looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in Star Wars. And today we are diving into a dangerous mission, the final 2 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2, entitled The Summit and Plan 99. And our crew for this mission consists of, first of all, the Padawan, Josh Beeghley. Hey there, Josh.
Hello, hello.
And we are glad to welcome Robert King, who shall henceforth be known as Guardian of the Wills. Welcome, Robert.
The Force is with me, and I am one with the Force.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that our crew has assembled for this mission. And to start off the adventure, here are our official summaries of the episodes. Very short and simple. An infiltration proves more challenging than expected, and the heroes are tested. So before we dive in, we'd like to take a brief moment to recognize and thank our heroes, who hopefully we don't test too much. The people who make this podcast possible are patrons, including Celine C., James R., Christopher K., Lavinia S., and Michelle K. And if you want to help StarQuest continue our mission, please consider becoming a patron like these heroes at sqpn.com/give. Thank you so much. All right, so we are discussing these final chapters of season 2. And oh my goodness, you guys, when you first watched these 2 episodes, what was your first impression? Robert, I know you've been itching to give us your first impression here. So what do you got?
Oh man, it's so mixed, because I loved that these episodes were bringing us back to like the big picture story of the Bad Batch, the connections with Crosshair and the connection, sort of the big picture story of Omega, and getting into where the Batch fit into the larger Star Wars mythos. And I loved all of that. And I loved that they weren't shying away from the high drama of the risks the Batch had to take in order to get where they were going. And, spoilers, big deal. I love that they were willing to knock out one of the members, that they were willing to sacrifice Tech. And it looks like Tech is really gone. I mean, you never know.
How can he survive without those goggles,
Yeah, I mean, the fall he could have survived, but the loss of his goggles, I don't know. But at the same time, it felt like so much of this season, it felt like it was unevenly handled, and I felt like they were like grabbing my heartstrings just a little too hard to tug on them, and I was like, oh, I love the story. I wanted it to be done a little bit better, I guess, is my first impression.
Okay.
But that's my experience of it, and I know a lot of people really did feel that that emotional impact that they were going for. So maybe it's just me.
Oh, it could be. I guess we'll find out through this podcast here. What about you, Josh? What was your first impression?
I sort of felt the same with that, you know, pulling on your heartstrings and just pulling your emotions in like every single way, because they would set something up and then they would break it down. They'd have love and then there'd be sadness. There'd be just really cool action scenes as well, which I also always enjoy. Who doesn't like a little explosion here and there?
Yeah.
But no, I couldn't get over the fact of it just sort of having these small things that they would slowly set up, like within these 2 episodes alone, and then just go an entire different course. And it's like it constantly made you like keep thinking about it. And I don't know, all my predictions throughout the whole thing were like, nope, can't happen, not anymore.
They were knocking down your predictions there. Yeah, I guess for me, I would say that I too was struck that they chose to eliminate Tech from the crew, but I did appreciate how they gave his character a proper death, a noble death. And as I think we'll discuss during this podcast, what Tech's death meant really for the Batch, and perhaps for the future of the Bad Batch. Overall, I think one of the things besides what you all covered that really stuck with me was the music and the emotional impact, or I should say, the role that the music played in the emotional impact for these 2 episodes, because I noticed when I was rewatching how Kevin Kiner was almost telegraphing to us what was the emotional, undertone throughout the different characters, the different situations. That moment when they were like, you know what, let's quit soldiering and let's go to Pabu and let's put all this behind us. All of that. So speaking of Pabu, that's where we actually start off in this story arc. So let's get into it here. We begin with, of course, the mission, the discussing of whether we're going to actually go to try to save Crosshair. And we are in this discussion with Echo, of course, who has come back, Hunter, Tech, Wrecker, and Omega. And the goal is to track Hemlock's ship, of course, to its origin. I found it interesting that Hunter is hesitant at first, and that it's the rest of the crew, especially Tech, who persuade him on the basis that Crosshair is still their brother. So I just wanted to ask you guys, what are your thoughts about, at that moment, obviously Hunter is sort of the father figure or the leader, but why do you think he was hesitant to go into this mission? Why do you think he wasn't more enthusiastic or willing to go after Crosshair?
I think he was just thinking of, the possibility of this actually being successful. And I mean, the end of season 1, they gave Crosshair a chance to join them again. And Crosshair very definitely said, no, I'm going my own way. And, this is a high risk mission with a lot of possibility of somebody getting hurt or not coming back. And all for someone who, last they knew, didn't want to be brought back in the first place. So I can see that being a real, cause for hesitation on Hunter's part. It's like, is this even a mission worth taking, especially with all of the risks involved?
True. And it's also curious, how, I guess, enthusiastic the others were in comparison then, when you think about all of the things you just mentioned. Josh, what do you think about this whole dynamic?
I actually kind of agree with Robert on this one, of it being him thinking into it. And I mean, if the last time I heard of someone was they never wanted to see me again, and then we're going to go rescue them, I'm like, they don't want to, he doesn't want us. We're going to do our own thing. And also they just found this really nice vacation island to live on, and they can be away from all of it. I understand. And then there's, I guess, the only reason I can see them being excited is just they can have the family back together on Pabu and like live a happy life there. I feel like that would hopefully be their end goal. I don't know. I'm not good at predicting things, so.
Well, that's an idea, though, that maybe Crosshair, if they brought Crosshair to Pabu, maybe it would be a chill pill for him, and he would just be able to relax and enjoy life a little more. But, you know, the idea that that you all have brought up, it's interesting that we can consider how Hunter has sort of crossed this threshold of, you know what, I don't know about all this soldiering business anymore. I mean, look at where it's gotten us and how it's divided up the team and endangered everyone and just all that they've been through over the last couple of seasons. So, I think that's an interesting little study into where Hunter has arrived as a character.
I mean, no surprise that Omega was all in favor of rescuing Crosshair.
Sure.
But, you know, kind of the surprise was Tech speaking up.
Yeah.
And I think this was, you know, if there has been a really strong thread through the whole season, it's been the development of Tech as a character, which, you know, in hindsight is obviously setting up for this big emotional punch, right? But yeah, I think it shows, and I think maybe this is part of what moves Hunter, is that if Tech can see the value of the family connection they have with Crosshair, then maybe that is what overrides his hesitation or reluctance.
Good point. Yeah. And this is indeed beginning a series of special moments with Tech in these 2 episodes, the next of which, immediately following, is with Fee. And, you know, I really need somebody to edit together a compilation of Fee and Tech moments, perhaps to an AI reworked version of Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl. Make it Brown Eyed Guy, you know? So
make it happen, internet.
I know that some people watched this scene and immediately were concerned for the safety of Tech. Did you guys have that reaction, or what was your reaction to this scene?
Kathy was right. No, I thought it was actually really nice, because then I was like, okay, they're going to go do this mission. They're going to come back. He's going to be happy. He's going to give her a big kiss at the end, and it's going to be happy end of the season. It's going to be great.
Do you even know Tech?
Well, no, he wouldn't know what's going on, but he'd figure it out eventually.
Oh, man.
I thought that was going to be like the perfect ending. It's going to be like a Disney happy ending. But no.
What do you think? Disney owns Star Wars now or something?
Yeah. I expected a Disney ending.
Oh man. So the whole Fee and Tech relationship is one of these things that felt like it was too deliberately pulling on the heartstrings for me.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't know Fee well enough as a character. I don't think we've gotten enough of her to understand what it is she sees in Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tech certainly isn't giving her anything back to to encourage her.
I think he has maybe slightly, but that could be debated.
Yeah, I don't know, it feels like a relationship that the writers really want to happen, but I'm not sure I'm buying it.
Okay.
And so that moment kind of, it certainly kind of broadcasted that, something bad could happen to Tech here. But beyond that, for me, again, I may be the outlier experience here, but for me, it fell flat.
Yeah,
I have an emotionless guy in it. Like, it's gonna feel flat.
I think I was sort of in the middle with this because I've come to appreciate Fee for embracing Tech for who he is. I think that Tech is so beloved by those of us who watch the show. And so to me, it makes sense that someone would, in the show universe, Galaxy, think, you know what, this guy ain't all that bad, and start to form a crush or an admiration or a friendship or whatever however you want to put it. So I'm in the middle as far as, I think Fee and Tech might have become an item down the line if he had survived, but I wasn't putting as much emotional value into their interaction here as I think some people were.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we get to Ariadu, Tech becomes this crucial part of the mission, right off the bat. He has to temporarily disable the sensor so that they can hitch a ride on this. I call it cable car, but they're calling it a rail car. So whatever you want to call it, it's Star Wars. We call it many things. And they get inside this compound apparently it's called Raven's Peak, which is kind of cool. And we get to meet these Imperial officials. We've actually met all of them, apparently. And so I will be asking you guys what your thoughts were on getting to see inside this Imperial summit. But let's review who we see here around the table. So we have Dr. Royce Hemlock. Of course, we have Governor Wilhuff Tarkin. From Rogue One, Commander Orson Krennic, by the way, voiced by Ben Mendelsohn.
Mm-hmm.
We have from the original Star Wars film, General Hurst Ramodi, who asks whether the clones assented to participating in the experiment. So that was that guy. If you're like, I couldn't tell between the two of them. And then we had the other fellow from the Clone Wars series, Admiral Barton Coburn, who during this summit points out the clones were cunning, they were loyal to the Empire, they served. So that was the team there assembled. Were you guys geeking out to see inside an Imperial leaders summit here? What were your thoughts as we were getting these insights here?
I was honestly a little surprised I guess I'm always a little surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, at how disorganized the Empire is. Like these are supposed to be the top minds in the Empire who are like, all of them are reporting more or less directly to the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't seem to know what each other is doing, and they seem to be like at cross purposes all the time. And it's, man, did it really need the rebellion for this Empire to fail?
So, yeah, I mean, Josh, were you feeling like they were sort of talking across the table at each other rather than with each other? Or were you geeking out at seeing Orson Krennic? What were your thoughts?
I don't know. I thought it was interesting whenever they brought up the clones and they're like, we had this great thing. What happened? And like even like the top people seemed oblivious as to it. And it's just like the emperor one day said no, so okay, we just do it no more. But I thought that was, I think, like my favorite part of it is just being like that. And then they just throw in the Easter egg right after. It's like, oh yeah, how's Project Stardust doing? we want to see that. So.
Yeah, that was fun.
I really appreciated the interest, if not quite concern, but interest in the clones and what was going on. And again, that repetition, they are Imperial property, which is like, you know, this huge red flag. You know, if you had any doubt that the Empire was evil, here you go. They're calling people property. This is bad.
Sure.
And yeah, the fact that at least a couple of them were paying attention to what is going on with the clones, not just as strategic assets, but as people they might have a responsibility toward.
Yeah, you know, I was trying to follow what was the through line, you know, what's the ultimate plan? As you were saying, it could almost seem like they were all doing their own thing and sort of like kids in 5th grade, you know, they all have their own project and then they come together and they're like, well, I did this project and this was my science project. So I was trying to follow Tarkin as he was sort of, you know, philosophizing about what they were trying to do. And he talked about this concept of unification requiring a strategy to deter dissent and rampant self-interest. I love how he speaks. And apparently, to deter dissent and to unify people across the galaxy, this requires, Hemlock says, an enlightened society with molecular alteration. So essentially, it seems to me like the Empire is trying to get everyone to think the same way, to be on the same page, to not rebel, to not be interested in their own, I guess, planets, cultures, what have you. And perhaps their method of getting to that point would be to enlighten everyone about how we could all be on the same page. We could all be unified by somehow, I guess, mind controlling everyone. I don't know. I mean, is that sounding like something that you heard as well? Or do you think I'm just sort of, maybe you had some other interpretation?
I don't know. With the Empire and definitely how it's been portrayed as just someone who just wants total control. You want everyone, like, it makes sense as to what you're saying with them needing that everyone's on the same page. Everyone needs to understand we are doing this for the interests of the galaxy as a whole. And yes, some people may suffer partially, but like, I don't know, they're trying to make themselves the good guys out of it and justify their actions, which may not always work out in their favor.
I was definitely getting Brave New World vibes from this. The you know, like the word I was surprised not to hear was order.
Right.
Which has kind of been the hallmark of the Empire's agenda in Andor and like I think in a couple of the movies even, you know, when you get a sense of what the Emperor is after, it's order. And Vader especially, we can bring order to the galaxy. This is like the Sith agenda. But yeah, the molecular alteration, the people being of one mind was very much making me think of, you know, kind of the genetically engineered psychological classes from Brave New World. Like everybody has your designated role in society, and you are both genetically and psychologically sort of limited to doing that one thing or.
Yeah. Right. And the goal would be for a peaceful society. So I think for some people, it may be those who are more inclined towards coercion and control would have no problem with this. If the goal is there's no war, there's no famine, there's no abuse, all of that. If everyone is peaceful and harmonious, then what's the problem? Right? So, I mean, how do you answer that? Because I think even today, in our own time and place, we see these types of sort of, realities where some folks are saying, well, let's not give people certain choices to do certain things. Let's force them to do other things. I mean, you could
for their own good, of course. Yeah.
You could fill in the blank. But, let's talk about that. I mean, what is so important from a Catholic perspective, what is so important about free will that we really, why do we respect it so much? What's wrong with coercing people if we get a peaceful society out of it? How do you?
I think ultimately because peace is not the highest value we have. Love is the highest value we have.
Okay.
And love requires freedom, which means love is not always going to be peaceful in that sort of sense of no conflict. Love is going to bring our differences out in order that we can love one another even in our differences. That for whatever reason in God's wisdom, he did not create a world of clones. He did not create a world of identical machines. He created a world of individuals, and individuals not isolated, individuals in community, but unique persons who have to overcome their differences, but also use their differences in order to relate to one another and find communion, ultimately communion in him, right?
I'm sort of hung up on the fact that you said of sort of how much we really give into a government and as a whole of how much power you give them. And I can't remember exactly what it's from. I think it's from one of the Federalist Papers, but it sort of sums up that idea of free will in it as well, is that we're all inherently given our own set of natural laws. So sort of like what we can do, what we can't do. And then whenever we form a government, we give up those natural laws and turn them into governmental laws. And I don't remember the exact terminology of it, which is bothering me a lot. But
you don't have all the Federalist Papers memorized?
I don't. There's too many of them.
What good is this college you've been going to? No, just kidding.
Oh, I'm not a history major.
Totally teasing the Padawan here.
Padawans these days, what are you going to do?
I got the right idea. That's what matters. But I don't know. I definitely like that idea of that. And then whenever you give too much of your own individual control is whenever it crosses a certain point of no return. And that's where I think the Empire starts to struggle in it as well, of not everyone is willing to give up as much as others because they see their own value in different things.
Yeah, and I can't help but, when the Empire talks about peace, I have learned how the Roman Empire used to define, Pax Romana was the absence of conflict, right? But then if you looked at the culture of Jesus and the Hebrew Shalom, that is actually a covenantal presence and agreement. that is something that we do, right? Peace is what we do. It's not an absence. So absolutely, that requires free will, right? As you guys were saying, something we have to contribute and something that we have to participate in. And so it can't be something that where we take away people's free will to participate in that. And that's a lot harder than just puppeteering people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to go ahead and inform the Empire about that, then good luck there. But that would have changed a lot of Star Wars.
I'll just call up Palpatine right now. I've got his number on speed dial.
You heard of this concept of shalom?
Yeah.
Palps. So, so we have also, this infiltration happening on base. We have the Bad Batch. They, with the help of very small Omega, successfully, they plant this homing beacon on Hemlock's ship. But there's a hitch, of course, because not everything can go off perfectly, right? There is something wrong with the surveillance system. And so they check it out and they run into our favorite guerrilla warrior, right? Saw Gerrera. And of course, they have a disagreement about how to combat this enemy. And I wanted to talk with you guys about this because, of course, Saw wants immediate casualties. That's his style, right? And the Batch is like, no, let's not be so hasty. Let's think about this. What's the long-term effect here overall? And I was thinking about the motivations behind Saw Gerrera and behind the Bad Batch. A lot of times when we talk about Saw Gerrera, we talk about how he's lost so much personally, and that created this angst within him that, motivates what we see in his character and these extreme choices that he often makes. But you could also say that the Bad Batch has lost a lot too, right? From the Empire. So what is it about Saw and the Batch that informs the differences in how they handle these things? They've both been trained to be soldiers, right? Saw got some training from the Jedi. So what's the difference? What do you think?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that the Bad Batch have something that they are striving for. They are looking for a way to get to Crosshair, to save Crosshair, maybe to save more clones. Whereas Saw has nothing to fight for. He only seems to have something to fight against. And so when they were kind of arguing their points back and forth, they both felt like they were justifying themselves. I'm not sure how principled either side really was in that argument. But yeah, Saw, he doesn't have anything to gain. He only has the vengeance of making them feel the pain that I feel. Whereas the Bad Batch, they have a chance at getting Crosshair back.
Yeah. I don't know, I see Saw as this very radical person who will do whatever he can just to cause damage. He's just a hothead, just going in, guns blazing, wherever. And he doesn't have a lot of thought into sort of what he really wants in the end. Sort of how, you were saying, where he's just fighting against the Empire rather than trying to, free a planet or anything like that. He's just going to kill as many stormtroopers as they can and call it a day. And I think that plays a lot then into how he's going to also go about things. He's not going to go in and do these discrete missions and try and steal information. He's going to blow up the whole base while he's there. It's just what he's going to do. And the Bad Batch are not trying to cause any more scenes and getting any more publicity for themselves, as well as trying to go out through their own mission of trying to rescue, or somewhat rescue, try to get back their brother. Still don't know the proper term for, like, are they technically rescuing him or just trying to talk to him a little? Have a little tea party.
I think rescue is on the table at least. Give him the opportunity to be rescued, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's definitely reconnaissance first, but they want to see what's up. Want to see if it's truly a cry for help. Yeah. And I think both of you have a lot of insight into that, and it's almost as if these two different sides, Saw and his side versus the Bad Batch and their side, are dealing with their lot in life in different ways. And it just reminds me of how all of us have that choice, going back to choices and free will. We have that choice to be able to handle the rough patches, in different ways. And ultimately, if you learn to direct your anger and frustration into something, into a mission, like the Batch are really doing. And I think Saw himself believes that he has a plan, but he has a plan for destruction, as you were saying, and it's sort of like burn it all down, so that they'll stop hurting people, like stop the Empire from hurting people, burn it all down. And I think the Batch, we could probably learn a thing or two from how much has been taken from them, how much their lives have been changed by the Empire. And yet they have chosen not to go about that. They really could have, but they wanted to salvage their lives. They wanted to salvage others' lives. And so it's just interesting to think about. So as their presence is discovered in the compound, the Batch are able to safely leave and get back onto this railcar system. Explosions happen, right? We see the cable car system lose power, and suddenly here they are in the middle of the sky, almost in the middle of the clouds, sitting ducks, right? And this is where episode 15 ends. So, if you have some sweaty palms thinking about hanging up there, you can take a second to wipe your palms off.
Just think how Wrecker feels.
Oh my gosh, I know. He was like, oh, this isn't so bad at first, right?
And then he looks down.
Never look down.
So before we get into the finale episode, quick reminder to everyone, while you're listening, do rate and review the podcast. If you haven't already, let us know how we're doing. Help Secrets of Star Wars get seen by more deep thinking Star Wars nerds like you and I and all of us. So thank you very much. All right. So episode 16, here we are. Walk me through your feelings as we are dangling over this chasm and we watch the Bad Batch trying to problem solve here. Tech is in a lot of trouble. He's trying to get the power back online. The Imperial forces are shooting at them. What are you thinking at this moment? Are you considering what could possibly happen?
So the first thing I was thinking was just the shot of the rail cars in the clouds and the smoke with the mountain behind them and the tower on the mountain. And I'm thinking, I've seen this somewhere before. It reminded me maybe of like a World War II movie or something like that. And I'm sure it's probably some kind of deliberate reference on the artist's part, but I'm blanking on what it could be. So this is my appeal to you listeners. What was this shot like referencing, if anything? Because it was so beautifully composed and just so dramatic.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite the emotional grab that you're going for, but it was a powerful image, and I think deliberately chosen.
Absolutely.
I was very much filled with, all right, which way are they gonna end up dying here? it was like, all right, here comes the airplanes, here come the stormtroopers up the other one. Which one's gonna do it first? But it definitely kept you on your toes as to how they're really going to get out of the situation. And I think they did a good job of grabbing you enough to be able to be like, they are going to need a miracle to get out of here. But it just didn't look like anything could happen.
Well, and we're so used to them getting into these terrible pickles and somehow being able to MacGyver their way out of it, right?
It's what they do.
They're the Bad Batch. They're Clone Force 99. They do the impossible, right? But I think you're right. The creators of the show made this situation so realistic and terrifying. And unfortunately, Tech gets shot off and he's dangling from his belt before realizing that in order to save the rest of the batch, his line has to be cut. And so he calls for Plan 99. Now, did you all catch why it might have been called Plan 99?
I did. And if you read Wikipedia, it actually has a really nice little explanation for it. And it's like, with it, like, regardless of the orders, they need to sacrifice themselves to complete the mission. And I thought that was actually a really nice way of putting it, because obviously with 99, it references 99's sacrifice during
Clone 99.
Clone 99 on Kamino.
I really appreciated that reference. And for those who haven't watched the Clone Wars yet or haven't gotten to that point, if you want to watch that story arc related to Clone 99, it's in season 3, the first 2 episodes of season 3. So check that out. Definitely. Oh my gosh, to see Tech sacrifice for the rest of the crew and just giving that sigh and saying, when have we ever followed orders? That was pretty memorable. With the music and Omega screaming, no.
Yeah, and Wrecker screaming. The whole... Like, I don't think that any of them, except maybe Tech at that moment, thought... I don't think they were thinking about, there's a chance we might not get out of this. They're always practical. What do we do next? What do we have to do? Okay, we've got to get the power on. We've got to get the car back connected to the rail. What is the practical thing we need to do? And that practical thing they needed to do, that Tech needed to do, we've got to get rid of this dead weight that's hanging off of the car. And then connecting that to it's me and it's, the relationship we have. And it's, there's just a lot going on there.
Yeah. And when you think back now to when Tech stood up for this mission in the first place, right? That he was the one that said, no, Crosshair is our brother. We need to go for him.
We don't leave anyone behind.
Right. To see him be that sacrifice, so that they could accomplish that mission. It's pretty remarkable. And I kind of have come to view, now that we've seen his last moment, to view his character as, in some ways, opposite of Crosshair. So I want to sort of run these thoughts by you guys and see what you think. In some ways, Crosshair and Tech are very similar because they have a very methodical thought process, right? That sometimes people would consider to be extreme in certain ways. Crosshair was separated from his brothers because good soldiers follow orders, but Tech was separated from them by not following orders in a way. And Crosshair's decision to separate from them was made regardless of what the impact would be on the rest of the crew, whereas Tech's decision was made because of its impact on the rest of them. So in a way, now that we're getting close to meeting Crosshair again and seeing where he is in his character development, I can only hope that Crosshair can sort of take up that mantle in a way from Tech to rediscover his loyalty to the crew and sort of fill in some of that place, that technical, methodical, precision type of place. Obviously, we can never replace Tech fully, right? But they are similar in these ways. And so I don't know, what do you think about I don't know, just the relationship between these two characters and comparing them?
I mean, I think it goes all the things you said and even deeper. Like, they are both very much about precision. I love that moment when they were approaching. This was in the previous episode when they were approaching the rail cars, and it's like, this will require precision. Everyone turns to Wrecker, and it's like, I can handle it. but precision is Tech's thing, and precision is Crosshair's thing, and again, they're both very much focused on doing what they see needs to be done. But like you said, for Crosshair, it's, what needs to be done is follow the orders. And what needs to be done for Tech is save the mission regardless of the orders. Save the team. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I feel like with Crosshair and Tech, in terms of like how they matured throughout this season, Crosshair, I feel like, got the more emotional aspect that you feel like Tech would need, because he doesn't seem to grasp human emotions at all, and it took, Crosshair being stuck out in the middle of the winter with just another clone to realize that, like, this is all he has. And while Tech may sort of understand that this is my family, it's sort of like, does he actually truly understand, like, what a family is? And I think that's also where him being with, Omega and Wrecker and Hunter for the past couple of arcs or whatever, he's sort of gotten to see more of what a family is and slowly grow into that more emotional, caring person and looking out for them, which is why he was able to do that and make sure that they would be the ones that would be safe in the end.
Yeah.
Without losing any of that sort of logical, rational mindset. He, in fact, one of the things I love about Tech's sacrifice is it's not like motivated by passion or emotion. It's motivated by, this is what would be good for my brothers. This is what would be good for the batch, in a very rational way. And it's like, oh, love is more than just, that passionate feeling. Love can come from the mind as well as the heart, and it's just as powerful, whatever its source is.
Yeah. And it's now that we're speaking about these two characters, I'm realizing that's what they were doing the whole season. They were developing these two characters in this parallel sort of way. So we had the development of Crosshair and his emotional awareness, not only of others, but also inside himself, this interior awareness, and sort of claiming that for himself and learning to speak up for himself as a person, as an individual person. It was really important for him in his development. And I think for Tech, he was always sort of speaking up for his own opinion, but to be able to do that on behalf of the family was where he needed to grow, and he definitely got to that point. So it's really awesome that we got to see both of those characters develop in that way. So it makes me eager for season 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just talking about, when we looked at Crosshair in his big, story arc, we talked about the environment, and we talked about how the environment was very important. We've sort of discussed that throughout the last few arcs. If we look at the rail cars and the cable car being up in the clouds and sort of dangling up in the air, I wonder if that was an intentional choice on behalf of the showrunners, because it gives this sense of fragility and this sense of, vulnerability that you may not get in another setting. To when you think about, they were definitely in the clouds, and the clouds are very foreboding, but they are also, fragile in this sense of they're like nothing. It's like just wisps of precipitation, Any thoughts about what the setting might have meant as we lost Crosshair, or we lost Tech?
Go for it, Josh.
I really don't know. I'm trying to think of words, but I'm just
that's okay.
Yeah, the clouds are such a presence in those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They hide the ground. You have no idea how far down the ground actually is, because it's completely hidden by the clouds, right?
Yeah.
So they're like literally ungrounded.
They can't see the bottom. They can't see. They can't see the footing underneath them. So it feels very uncertain. It feels, very vulnerable. Like I mentioned, I think they're just feeling emotionally and physically extremely vulnerable.
I think it also shows how isolated they really are, being suspended like that and above the clouds, with no one really there to support them from below or around them.
Yeah, they are very on their own. And the cable car finally crashes, and we find the rest of the batch waking up to this pile of rubble. And we come to seeing Omega's first person point of view. I remember that this happened, I believe it was last season, when, was it Wrecker who got hurt? I'm trying to refresh my memory here. One of them got hurt, and we saw their first person point of view when they were taken into the ship. And we saw that again here with Omega being very discombobulated, obviously injured. And we get a first person POV. Any thoughts about what impact that had and why that was brought up at this particular moment? I tend to think that it really put us in their heads so that we could sort of see how bad the situation was, what a difficult spot they were in, and just really sort of discombobulated and overwhelmed.
I think it also really showed how uncertain they were as to what their next move was. You know, with everything just sort of seeming like a fuzz and ringing in your ears and just being like very out of place now because you feel stranded on this random island now that you had to use a cable car to get into. Like, it shows that, I think also the nice thing of having it through Omega's perspective is that she's a child. And, you know, having a child in this situation, I think also puts you a little bit closer into it and makes you have more empathy towards them, sort of having them keep pulling on your heartstrings.
Yeah.
It for a moment made me wonder whether she was going to make it.
Right.
And, you know, Omega has been really the heart of the show from the beginning. It's, yeah, I mean, to show how fragile she is, that even her plot armor isn't that strong. And having just established that Tech doesn't have plot armor anymore, it raises all kinds of questions. It definitely made me feel that was the one place I think where it did feel like it wasn't just tugging on my heartstrings. I really did feel engaged. Like, oh man, anything could go wrong. You know, is anybody going to get out of this alive? And yeah, that was wonderfully effective, I thought.
Yeah. And so when they take her to Ord Mantell and AZ takes a look at everyone, Omega's waking up,
man.
and it's that moment where she asks, "Where is Tech?" And she's protesting, "We've got to go back. He can't be gone." Hunter has to be the dad and give some finality to the situation for her. And I think she is, in a way, the reason that we got that POV was because we sort of become Omega, because we don't want Tech to be gone. We want to be the one that's protesting, saying, no, we can't have lost Tech, you know? And so when we're identifying with her, she's in this spot emotionally. But Hunter insists that they will not waste his sacrifice. And this is the moment where he says, "You know what? Me and Wrecker think we should put all this soldiering behind us, settle down at Pabu. What do you think?" Did you actually believe for a millisecond, that that's where we were going to go next? Or did you just know that it couldn't be that easy?
It's never that easy. One thing with that scene, though, I thought was really interesting as we're sort of talking about it again, is how much more it feels like they've grown instead of being a soldier and turning more into a person, with how Hunter is more as a father figure and trying to help Omega through her first death of someone that she loved. You know, she saw clones all the time, but she never really saw them out in battle. And now she's lost one that's been close to her for her whole life. And it shows a lot of their maturity of being able to help her through the situations and do what's best for her without being like, well, he's dead. That's the life of a soldier. Let's just keep going.
Right.
And they're sort of looking at all these different situations now as to what the best next move is.
Which ironically wasn't that Tech's advice to her earlier in the season when she was sad about Echo not staying with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just, it's life. Move on.
Yeah. We're soldiers. That's what we do. And yeah. But no, you're right. We're more than soldiers now.
We need a vacation.
Well, and that's, I mean, so the design of Pabu, the island on Pabu, and the design of Mount Tantus, you know, they both have, you know, this sort of slope going up and then this ring around them and then a peak above. And they're very parallel settings in a lot of ways, just visually. So again, I don't think that was a coincidence. And the parallels you were drawing between Crosshair and Tech, you know, both of them sort of growing beyond what it is to be just a soldier. And to some extent, everybody. I mean, we were talking earlier in the podcast about how, you know, Hunter doesn't seem to be using his enhanced senses to be hunting that much this season. He's more focused on being the father to this family.
Protecting them. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, growing beyond his designation into who he is as a person and who he is in relationship with these other people. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of what the show is all about. We have clones who are supposedly identical to each other, but are instead radically individual and different from each other. And supposed to obey orders, but they exhibit all of this free will.
Right. And that's what Tarkin was saying was troubling to him, is that the clones, especially under the leadership of the Jedi, were developing a troubling individuality. And
yes,
but that's
darn those Jedi.
You know, I mean, it's being a person, right? And so as we get to this difficult moment, we have even more heartbreak because we realize that Sid has ratted them out. She's offering these empty condolences to Wrecker and, you know, eventually fesses up that in her self-interest, she just had to report them to the Empire. And so here we are with Hemlock on Ord Mantell. He's got Wrecker tied up. He's mocking Hunter's paternal affection for Omega, threatening him and feigning sympathy for Tech's death. And of course, Omega disobeys Hunter's orders, ends up caught, right? I mean, it was a wonderful sequence to watch, to unfold as far as how the writers went about, I think following up on what was painful for each of these members of the crew, you know, just for Hunter to see Wrecker tied up, first of all. I mean, Wrecker's the strongest of them all. So to have Hemlock just standing there next to Wrecker, you know, in charge of Wrecker, you know, physically was, you know, striking. And then to be basically hunting down Hunter, you know, baiting Hunter. And, you know, it was just, I don't know, that really struck me. I don't know if you guys had anything else you wanted to say about this whole sequence and how it pans out.
I thought the whole chase scene was really interesting. of them being a family and trying to help each other out, like all throughout it, and then it just kind of becomes a game of like, all right, now we got to chase this person and then this person. But I don't know. I think it worked out in a way that also will make season 3 good, of sort of starting off with having to rescue Omega and seeing her as the prize child, as we were sort of introduced to her as in season 1 of being, this unaltered clone, and her being sort of like the key to whatever the Empire wanted, and now whatever, I guess, the Bad Batch wants and their freedom, and sort of seeing how they're going to rescue her, where Crosshair is going to play into it. If there's more than just the goggle remains, he could still be alive, but you haven't, unless if he blew up on screen. Even then, Echo survived being blown up, so
maybe he landed on a tree. Who knows?
Yeah, Maul survived being cut in half.
No one's really dead.
Yeah. There's hope for Tech, but I don't know. I don't know if I want Tech to remain dead or to come back dramatically.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Like what would have the deeper impact? I agree. It was a great chase sequence, and like all of them really showing their willingness to put their own lives on the line for the others. The little detail I loved, as soon as there was a chance at escape, Wrecker just kind of snaps his bonds off. It's like, those cuffs were not gonna hold him. He was only, keeping him on because he didn't want, everybody to shoot him. But I thought that was like fantastic. Sid's betrayal was sadly sudden but inevitable.
Right.
They've been teasing it for so long too.
Mm-hmm.
If they do the entire season, they're like, she's gonna do it. She's gonna do it. And it's finally at the very end. It's like, now she does it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was coming. And yeah, definitely a great sequence. We end up with Echo and Hunter on their own, I believe. Was Wrecker with them as well on the ship?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I thought only Omega got captured.
Okay. Only Omega is captured. And she ends up in Hemlock's lab compound secret thing, and whatever we're calling it. Apparently or supposedly returning her to Nala Se, so that Nala Se will do what Hemlock wants, but Nala Se says what the Emperor wants is impossible. So does Hemlock only want Omega just so that Nala Se will have some motivation to work for him? Or do you think that there's some underlying other possibility? Do you think Hemlock, surely he knows what makes Omega special, right?
I don't think he does. I think he only learned about Omega from now I'm blanking on the Kaminoan Prime Minister's name.
Oh yes.
Tongwei? No, that was someone else.
Yeah.
Lama Su.
Oh, we'll keep.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Thank you, Lama Su. I think he only learned about Omega's existence from Lama Su. I think Omega is special, but only Nala Se knows what is special about her. Maybe Emery Carr knows what is special, but I'm not sure of that either. If she did, then I think Hemlock would be, it would make a different situation.
I think that's all he really needs to know. Even if she was something special, really all she is an unaltered clone. Like, there's nothing inherently special, it seems so far at least, about Omega. but it's enough for him to get what he wants out of Nalase and get the results for what the Emperor demands of him. And unfortunately, that sort of seems like how the Empire works, is they just need some sort of motivator for people to do what they need to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And now he has that motivation.
So what does the Emperor want? I mean, are we assuming that it is the Rise of Skywalker end of being able to clone himself with the Force sensitivity and wielding ability intact? Or is he wanting to, molecularly alter people so that all of the people across the galaxy will be, do his bidding? I mean, what is this ultimate goal that the Emperor wants? What's your interpretation of that?
I think the cloning theme is running across all of the Disney Plus shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking of blanking on names, to Dr. Pershing in Andor,
mm-hmm.
and his little speech, and how, he was talking about you can bring out the best qualities in a person,
mm-hmm.
through this cloning process. And Moff Gideon's idea of creating an army of force wielding clones of himself,
mm-hmm.
force wielding Mandalorian clones of himself, and all of these different sort of aspects, they do seem to imply like a large number of clones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, the Snoke and then the somehow Palpatine returned is probably like plan B or C.
Okay.
For the Emperor.
That makes sense.
But I don't know if it was quite the let's make everybody in the galaxy a clone or somehow molecularly altered
mm-hmm.
to be obedient
mm-hmm.
automatons or whatever will bring peace to this galaxy.
I mean, I'm thinking about, just on that side note, before Josh gives his take here, I'm thinking of that chip that was inserted into all of the clones that, of course, was turned on, right, when Order 66 was given. If they could just create something like that, but for everyone to do whatever the Emperor wants and distribute that across the galaxy somehow. I don't know. That's I guess if the Emperor could think of any plan A 100%, yes, I love that plan. It's probably something like that. That's what I'm thinking, just for ultimate domination. But I don't know. I have no clue as to what this particular impossible plan is that Nalase is referring to. I don't know, Josh, what do you think?
I don't know. With all of the different clonings, sort of different cloning projects going on throughout the series, different universe, it makes it seem like Palpatine's main goal is either with Vader and the Padme situation, because that was sort of dove into Invader Immortal, the video game, on how that came about and sort of went down the drain. But then there's also his own protection of Vader's betrayal, which is inevitable in the Sith world. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure it is that in the end it's going to be for his own self-interest and not for anyone else's. He's a Sith.
Undoubtedly, yes.
That makes the most sense. But it would be interesting also to see if there's a different idea within using cloning as a way for more control and more order. Only time will tell.
And at the very end, as Omega finally locates Crosshair, recovering on a table, apparently he was not cooperative.
Imagine that.
Emery Carr comes along and unveils her identity as Omega's sister. And she says it's ironic that Omega trusts Nala-Se, but does not trust her. I mean, I don't trust Emery Carr. I don't know about you. Who is this person? Where does she come from? Why was she a mistake? Was she intentionally, was a female clone intentionally created? Are there a bunch of female clones out there somewhere that we haven't met? Or, I mean, what is going on here? Who is this person? Do you have any theories about this?
No, I got nothing. I mean, I honestly think that Omega was obviously a backup plan, but it's who this other person is that I have no idea. And they introduced her like just enough to make you want to know more, but they didn't give you enough to satisfy you, which I think was their goal for going into season 3 then, of sort of explaining Omega's origins and stuff.
We do know that she's not 100% working for Hemlock. The way she sort of engineered Crosshair's escape a few episodes back, allowing him to send the signal to the batch and so on, probably winding him up on that table recovering. But yeah, where she's from, what her agenda is, man, your guess is as good as mine. Do you have a theory, Angela?
Well, I was trying to have a theory because I always look into people's name meanings, you know?
Oh.
And so I looked up Emery, and it's an old German name that means home strength. And it could be a male or a female name, interestingly enough. And when I was thinking about the name Carr, I couldn't help but think of, for the younger folks, you may not know, but there was this show called Knight Rider. Okay. And, and that was where we had basically what is now a Tesla car, where there was this car.
Gosh, you're right.
There was this car that could do these amazing things back in the 80s, which now our cars are actually able to do, like drive itself and give us information about things. But so that car was...
It also had cool armor and weapons and could do some really sweet jumps.
Okay, yes, there was a little bit more to it. But so the main car's name was Kit in that show. And Kit had an evil twin at one point named Carr, Karr, spelled exactly the same. And so I was like, Kit was programmed to preserve human life, but Carr was programmed for self-preservation. So did they maybe pull some inspiration from Knight Rider to name Emery Carr as perhaps she has something to do with the preservation of the clones, or perhaps her own self-preservation? I don't know.
You're just hoping for a David Hasselhoff cameo in season 3, aren't you?
Definitely not. That would throw me off so much. It would take me out of the show completely. But interesting note, I don't know if we mentioned this earlier when Emery was brought up in the show before, but she is played by Keisha Castle Hughes, who actually has been in Star Wars before on screen. She played the Queen of Naboo in Revenge of the Sith. So very interesting connection. But I was reading an interview with her, and she was not informed about anything related to Emery Carr's identity except like the episode before this episode where she actually says, I'm your sister, or we're sisters. So, so she was just playing this character a certain way, you know, as sort of a neutrally motivated character. And now we know the actress herself had very little information about how to play the character. So with all that being said, she is quite mysterious, and I would be very curious to hear if anyone else has a theory out there. Maybe they picked up on a crumb that we missed. So would love to hear that.
Star Wars does have something of a history of these family relation bombshells.
Oh yeah.
Little known movie, you know, as Tom Holland says, that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. Well, do you all have any final thoughts? Any other tidbits that you wanted to discuss before we end the Bad Batch season 2?
I want to see the Zillow Beast again.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in season 3, but I am 100% down for it.
Yeah. They did a really good way of closing out the season and creating an initial problem for them to dive into for season 3. And season 3 is going to be the series finale, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So we'll get to see that close up.
That fact gives me a lot of hope for season 3. And when I heard that, it kind of explained, I may have said this in a previous podcast, but it kind of explained a lot of what I think are like the difficulties that season 2 has had. But I think season 2 has been just doing a lot of setup for season 3. And so I'm really looking forward to all the payoff, I guess.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they all end up surviving, or who ends up surviving. Will they all end up on Pabu?
It's a possibility.
What happens to Emery
before
Carr?
Pabu, I would have said no, everybody has to die in the end. But now there's
Pabu.
Now there's hope.
Yeah. It's like this weird purgatory place. They're not dead, but they're not alive in the main storyline. So, yeah. All right. Well, I want to know everyone else's theories. So please send us your feedback. Let us know what your theories are. Send us your emails to starwars@sqpn.com. You can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Leave us a comment there. Tweet us at SQPN. And if you're interested in joining over 750 other fans of this show and other StarQuest shows in our online community, just go to sqpn.com/Discord, where we have much accord, and we do not have Discord, but it is in fact located on the Discord platform. So if you would join us there, and we can continue this conversation, we can share theories to our heart's content and create our own Pabu, a digital Pabu. And don't miss our next deep dive series as we take a look at Star Wars Visions Season 2 of Star Wars stories from animation studios all around the world. So subscribe. You can subscribe to Secrets of Star Wars in basically every major podcast platform, as well as on iHeartRadio, on TuneIn, on Stitcher, on SQPN's YouTube channel, and you can find previous episodes at sqpn.com/Star Wars. Well, folks, that's it. That's the end of The Bad Batch Season 2 here on Secrets of Star Wars. So until next time, until the new adventure, Josh Beeghley, thank you for joining us once again.
Always happy to be here.
And good news, Robert King, you survived this mission. Thank you for being here.
It's always good to survive.
And once again, I'm the one in the middle, the Bendu, Angela Sealana. Thank you for joining Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy, The Secrets of Stargate. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate.